Yes, good morning and welcome to Ralph's house. Starting off today with a shot of the broom. I know my good friend Steve, he likes to see the broom and that it's been busy. Well, it has been busy. You can see it has, look, it did that little bit there. Today I thought I'd talk about, before I get started and get bogged down by it all, is these light fittings and switches. Right, well, lighting circuits are relatively simple. If I just do it on a bit of paper, there's your, let's say that's your fuse box. From your fuse box, you take your wire to your first lamp, and then on to your second lamp, and so on until you come to the end on that floor. But this is how it gets interesting. Obviously at some point these cables are going to terminate because you've always got one cable in and one out, and well, until you get to the last bulb when you've only got one in. You've also got one to the bulb and you've also got an extra wire that goes to the switch, right? So that means you've got four cables there, one in, one out, one to the bulb and one to the switch. And what most houses have got, not all, but usually they make all these terminations in the ceiling on one of these things, which is alright if you can do that, but these days, well, to be honest, we don't have that many pendant lights unless your house hasn't been upgraded in a while. The other way you can do it is you have all your terminations in your switch. And I did think about doing the wiring that way, but the only thing is it means you've just got to have more cables down here, and actually, in fact, you actually end up using more cable doing it that way. That's my opinion, so that's why I'm not going for that option. And although by and large I'm against them, in this instance, because I'm doing lighting and it's rather piecemeal, so I'm doing one section, then I'm having to go on to another job and so on, it's going to make far more sense if I use junction boxes, which is what I'm going to do. Certainly really easy in the loft, because if I ever wanted to get to them, I could get to them. Not so easy on this floor, but I can at least make sure that if I use these junction boxes, they are in places where I can get to them. I roll back a bit of carpet, lift up one board, maybe a short board, and actually be able to get at that. So that's the way I've decided to do it. So there are kind of, thank you, three ways really of doing this. There might be a fourth that I hadn't actually thought about. Just put my top on my felt tip so it doesn't dry out. But I just thought I'd mention that before I started. People wondering, how I'm actually going to wire up these lights. Yeah, I'm going to use that method. I mean, there are advantages in that, because it also means that, at every light fitting, all I'm going to have is two cables, blue and brown, well, and an earth, of course, which makes it simpler. So, which is pretty much, we're going here. When I put in the cable for this wall light in my son's room, that's what I've done. We end up with one cable. And it also means when we come down to the light switches, well, obviously I've got two cables here because I've got two switches, but it only means one cable comes down. Horses for courses, people like to do it different ways, I suppose, but for me, from a practical point of view, and I bought a box of junction boxes, small ones, they've got to be four-way, not three-way, so that you've got one for your earth, you've got one for your live, you've got one for your neutral, and you've got one for your switched live. Because always remember about light switches, the cables that come down here aren't live and neutral, they are all live. It's a switch live, so a live comes in and a live goes back. And even though it's a blue wire, you put a brown sleeve on the end of it to show that it's a switch live. It's not live and neutral at switches. Just thought I'd mention all that in case anybody asked. I'm not an electrician, but I do understand all this stuff. So I thought I'd just mention that before we started. Right, if you remember in the last one, I'd lifted this board up on the landing with all the horrors that ensued and little labels. All the cables seem to come through this route. They come across the landing, across the top of the stairs. See, I'm sat on the stairs. Trying to save my knees this week because I spent too much time kneeling, and which is trouble when you get into your 60s. And spent the weekend sort of creaking about all over the place and not being able to get up too easy. So took a couple of days out from that. But anyway, I've identified what cables are what. There is, let's have a look. This one will be for the shower. I think it's 6mm, 4mm, whatever. This one that comes through is part of the existing ring main, so we can, actually I'll show you downstairs what's going underneath and you'll kind of figure out where I'm at. This is under the stairs. I've got to use a torch because we haven't got any light under here. Right, hold my camera straight. Right, that's where it all comes through. That's what you were looking at upstairs. So it all comes out under there. So that's that. This is that ring main that I was starting to pull through. I'll carry on pulling that through. The only other ones I've got are yeah, you wonder where the other cable comes in, really. If it was indeed a ring upstairs. This is so questionable out of the wiring in here. And I'll talk a bit more about ring circuits and radials, in case it helps anybody else. But it may be that the upstairs is just on a radial circuit. It's quite possible. The only other cables I can see is the thick one to the shower, which I'm not even sure is thick enough, and the old one to the immersion heater, which is, well, we've pulled that out, disconnected it. So I've just got to pull those cables through, really. I'm inclined to leave the one for the shower at the moment in case I need to use that to pull through a new length of cable, because look, that's pretty tight up there. You know, I'm struggling the other side to feed the boiler spur cable through there, and it's got to come through, unfortunately. But anyway, we'll have a go and see if we can get it through there. Yeah, an odd one. Seem to manage to get that boiler spur through now. So we'll have a look, see where it comes out down by the fuse box, and hope it reaches. I did leave enough on it to run it round, but we'll see. Yeah, I can see it. Not sure I can reach it. Oh, there it is. That's the one. I'll just pull that through. And that one kind of. That's the best thing to do. It doesn't matter if they're loose under there, as long as I tap this cable down here. Sorry, it's getting a bit grainy because we're in the dark. But anyway, the fuse box is there. Yeah, so it looks like that's going to reach all right. So let's pull that right through and put some cable clips on it. Right. I suppose what I could do, I haven't really thought about this, but I could, if I get a length of proper trunking, yeah, so if I leave this loose, I can buy some PVC trunking and bring all the cables down to this fuse box in a nice sort of neat manner. Yeah, that makes sense. Be a lot tidier than the way it is. This looks a bit of a mess. Probably all wants plastering under here, to be honest. But hey ho, we have to manage with what we've got. It's not a priority job at the moment. I've still got this one socket under the stairs. That's the only power I've got, actually. Yeah, so I do need to get this boiler spur in, because then, and by the way, that's on a 6 amp fuse, because it's not even going to draw as much as that. So effectively, this cable to the boiler, well, it's 1.5mm lighting cable, but it's only you know, it's only for the electronics on the boiler, so it's not going to draw much, and it can sit on its own separate fuse. Very important that it does, because otherwise it means that every time, well, not saying every time, but it, you know, if the consumer, oh, sorry about this light, if the consumer unit ever trips, you know, on the ring main, it doesn't take out the central heating as well, so it needs to be on its own independent one, 6 amp one. And lucky enough for this consumer unit, I've got 3 6 amp MCBs. So I shall use one for the upstairs lighting, one for the downstairs lighting, one for the boiler. I'll use those 3 6 amp MCBs up then. This is all meanness to anybody who knows nothing about electrics. I know. I'm just talking to myself. Right, let's pull that cable where I want it to go. By the way, in domestic installation, it's very important that you provide bonding, and I'll explain why. If you don't know what bonding is, if you've ever looked under your bath or under the floorboards, or you may have had an immersion heater, you'll usually find some cable that looks like this. Yes, that's called bonding, and the idea of that is, if God forbid a live cable or anything live touches, say, I don't know, a copper pipe on your central heating system, if you've got some kid upstairs who happens to grab the radiator at the same time, it could be fatal. That's why you bond things. So you run that green and yellow cable, I don't know, 10mm is what I'm going to use, to where the gas comes in on the consumer side, and where the water pipes first come into the house. You must run bonding to those, and there's also another thing called supplementary bonding, which I'll probably have to do up in the bathroom. But what I did notice is, this is old bonding. It's just bare copper wire. We don't do that now. We sleeve copper wire. This is all good for stuff for Steve when he weighs it in for scrap, but yeah, it's not great, is it? You know, I found a lot of this stuff like that in here. Anyway, I'm going to pile these cables up from there. I'll have to put them all in a big scrap pile, otherwise I'm going to be tripping over it all. Really, so what I'm doing at the moment is just snipping stuff out and trying to make the way clear. Back at the top of the stairs again. We're making progress now. That thick cable goes to the shower. I'm going to have to replace that, there's no doubt about it, because I don't want that sort of arrangement at the top of the stairs for putting the shower on. It's ridiculous. Should have a pull switch. So that means I'm going to need a longer run of cable, and God, this stuff's expensive. Hey ho, it's got to be done, isn't it? That's going to be probably 50 quid for a reel of that. That one is the boiler spur. So what I've done, I've brought up a reel of that. I'll tell you what that's for. That's for the upstairs sockets. And I think, because I've actually got one in white, I think isn't it fire rated stuff? I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's 2.5. Great for the sockets. And the nice thing, because it's white, I'm going to be able to know which is new wiring so much easier, because all the grey stuff, apart from this boiler spur, will be old and can be just cut out, make things a lot simpler. So what I'll do is, while I've got this reel up here now, I'll thread some of that down so I can reach the fuse box easy, and then from then on, I know I've got to go to the next socket. Then I start taking power around. Now, I mentioned earlier about, and I did in the last video actually, about ring circuits, used to be known as ring mains, and radials. And any electrician worth his salt, I think, won't tend to use ring circuits upstairs. There's no point. You're just never going to get the load up here. And the difference is, I mentioned this, let's say that was the fuse box. The cable comes out of the fuse box, goes into a socket, comes out of that socket, into a socket, out to a socket, so on round, and then it comes back to the fuse box, because it runs around in a ring. That's why it's called a ring circuit. And I think that's good for, I don't know, 32, 35 amps, something like that. So, great in a kitchen. I'm all for that, because you've got cookers and kettles and toasters, and you know, there's quite a fair load. Upstairs bedrooms, So I think a radial circuit, which is protected by a 20 amp fuse, will be sufficient. In fact, I think I've only got 16 amp ones in there at the moment. They'll be all right. 20 amp would be ideal, but probably 16 will do. So with the radial circuit, you just come out the fuse box, into the socket, out of the socket, into the socket, out to the socket, and when you get to the last socket, that's it, you stop. You don't return back to the fuse box. But it does mean it doesn't take such a great load as a ring circuit. The downside of a ring circuit, and this is why I don't want to use them any more than I have to, is if you get a break in a ring circuit, all the sockets will work, but what you've ended up with is 2 radials because the circuit's been broken. And you know, that can happen any time in a house. You know, the lifetime of a house, somebody changes a socket and just omits to do something. But the nice thing is if you do it with radial, if there's a break somewhere, the rest of the sockets won't work. Much easier to identify. So that's why I'm using a radial circuit upstairs. As I say, we're not going to have much of a load up here. Makes sense, hey? Right, so I'll get this cable fed through, make sure I've got enough slack to reach the fuse box, and then I shall run this cable to the first socket. Pull the cables up, snip, run to the next socket, snip, and so on. And well, I should think by Wednesday I should have power on up here, at least in the sockets, and I shall carry on with the lighting circuit as well. Come on, decide which you're going to focus on. Still haven't decided what to do with this. Thinking about it the other day. Because it's nice, it lets light in, but obviously you can't have it open like that, otherwise people are going to go, straight down there. Could buy these, reinstate them, or I even thought of toughened glass across the top and a sort of, I don't know, stained glass vinyl on it, something like that. Just let some colour in, let the light in. All these ideas that I've got, haven't really come to any conclusions on it yet. Let's crack on with the wiring, because that's the most important job. Yeah, back under the stairs again. And that's coming through. I need a bit more than that, I think. Yep. That's more than enough. Leave plenty of slack in it. Okay, so I need to come off that. Actually, if I've only got that and a cooker cable, I might even get away with mini trunking down there. That'd be nice and tidy. Just run it behind this batten then. Get rid of all these clips and then get all this painted up again. Just so it looks nice. Let's have a look up there now. Yeah, it's a lot tidier. So I've got this one. This one's just hanging down. That's the one for the shower. So that won't stay there. That'll snipped off. Look, this is all the sort of stuff you find under here. This is all the old stuff. It's nice actually, because if I've now got this white stuff, I can actually see where it's all going. Yeah. Alright, well, there's no good me talking about it. I've got to get on with it, haven't I? Yeah, making good progress today. Got rid of most of the rat's nest. I've got a few odds and ends. Still got this lovely cable. Can't really get rid of that because it sort of goes under a joist and it goes under the bathroom floor. That's just this, and there is some evidence of bare bonding under another floorboard. Anyway, what I'll probably do is just chop those off so they're out of my way. So, and I've got to pull this out next because that's redundant. That's the old wiring, the old socket circuits for up here. This is the new one. I've already run that in, ready into the next room for the first socket. So I shall be connecting that up tomorrow. So at least I've got one socket live up here. I shan't loop out to the next one, obviously, until I've done all the sockets in situ, and then I'll join them on. That is the boiler spur cable. That's all ready. That's all connected at the socket, and it's dangling down by the fuse box, ready to connect up. The only other two cables I've got to run up are a wire for the downstairs lighting circuit, obviously because you've got to get it in the ceiling, you see, haven't you? So I've got to get one up for that, but I've also got to run another one up to go in the ceiling above and power all the lights from the, well, in the loft and on this floor. Not easy though, because originally from what I gather, they came up this channel behind all this. Well, I'm going to fill all this and make that right. Just put it back to what it should be. So there's, oh, it's a right mess they've made of that. Look at that, the woodwork. So I have to repair all that. So I've moved the switch there, which makes all sense. But under the 18th electrical regulations, there are things called prescribed zones. I'm not going to cover it because there's plenty of information around the web on prescribed zones. But basically, from what I can see, the only place I'm going to be able to run it is up this corner. And that's also where the shower cable is going to have to run. So that's just some trunking up there. Well, not trunking. Conduit, enough to take that cable. So it's got to take a lighting cable and it's got to take the shower cable. And it's all got to go in that corner. I've got to be careful though, because this is lath and plaster. If the worst comes to the worst in the future, I'll remove this lath and plaster wall and replace it with decent plasterboard and some water resistant plasterboard for this side. But look at the way the shower's fitting. Look at it. An Ivory 3 Triton or Triton. And it goes in this. I mean, look at this. It's not nice, is it? Yeah, we'll see what we can do with that. What I'm going to do, because he sort of smashed this corner out to get this conduit in. The previous guy that fitted it. So I'm going to have to repair that corner somewhere. So I don't really want to replace the whole shower. Just because of that. Because I really want, it wants to come in through the back of the shower. If possible. But short term, until this bathroom's done, you know, we may just have to leave it like that. A lot to think about in this bathroom. I'm certainly going to need some advice with it. What on earth to do with it. I just think at push, yeah, it's not nice, but you know, first few months, I can have a bath, you know what I mean? I can have a wash, I can put up with it. Just give it a coat of emulsion or something just to make it look a bit tidy. Yeah, it does want ripping out. I do like a bath, but you know, maybe a shower enclosure is going to be simpler. Don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? You got a combi boiler that will keep up with it. Yeah, so I've got to run a couple more lighting cables up, so I'm going to be busy from now on. But that is it from Ral's house for today. I'm always grateful when you spend a bit of time watching the videos, and especially if people drop me emails or leave comments or tips on how to do things. It's all useful, because I'm doing this on a very, very limited budget at the moment. I don't have to, but I think it helps if I do, because I'm a bit more creative then, and I find workarounds and things. It's so easy to throw money at a problem. Just say, you know, I'll call Builder B to come in and do this, that and the other. Well, yeah, it gets it done, but it's like the electrical wiring. I can do it. You know, I don't have a problem with it. I've just had to gen up on all the 18th regulations and make sure I comply with it, and that'll work safely. And you know, I'm working alongside an electrician friend who's going to do all the necessary tests at the end anyway. So that's fine. So that's it. Leave a like, leave a comment. Thank you for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.